Hello and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk. This is episode 38. My goodness, we're getting up there. And I believe we are back to our regularly scheduled episodes every single week. The offseason schedule is over, baseball is back, and that means you are going to hear from us a lot more. Who is us, you ask? Great question. My name is Trevor Hooth, and of course, I am joined by Nate Kosher. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Also excited to be returning weekly, as that means baseball is closer and closer upon us. Actually, will be happening this month. Now that we can say that, it's officially Monday, March 3rd, as we record this. So that's exciting.
That is exciting. And we love that baseball's back, and that's all good and dandy. But unfortunately, as we progress towards the regular season, that means injuries are happening. So, what we would like to do today is talk about a few injuries that popped up in the recent days, and some guys returning from injury. It's not all bad. There's some positives here, but definitely important as we head towards what will be some drafts. If you have not drafted already, to know who's injured, know who you could probably get later in the draft, so you can try to fill innings, fill at bats, whatever you may need. But some key injuries happening, Nate.
Definitely. Yeah, they started to kind of pile up. It seemed like maybe the first week and a half, we didn't hear much, but now games are being played, and people are jumping in, and things are happening, which would affect your fantasy team. Some of these are bigger names, some of them not as big of deals, but yeah, we have to
Well, why,
run through
why
it.
not start with the
Get
biggest?
prep.
Yeah, let's just start with the biggest name and make you sad right off the bat. That way, it can only get better. So Corbin Carroll
We'll do that.
is dealing with a back issue. Of course, Carroll on your beloved Arizona Diamondbacks. Is this something that is worrisome to you?
Well, let me tell you, I was feeling great because I just read the story. I think it was on ESPN about why the Diamondbacks think he'll bounce back after his struggles last year. And now, he's a stronger player for it and all this stuff. And then he started spring training great. He had hit, let's see, I think already 3 home runs, one of them a grand slam. That was before. Now he's out with back tightness. So um, it is a little worrisome to me actually, because coming off of last year, he already had some bigger question marks. I wasn't concerned. I still think he'll produce. Um, the second half of the season, he was on fire. I'm not worried, but uh, so much of his game is like fast twitch speed, right? Like down the line, trying to leg out a triple. Uh, that's his whole thing is speed, stealing bases, obviously. So something like a like back tightness seems minor, but anytime the back is involved, they can tend to those injuries can just tend to sit around for too long, and get re-aggravated. So I like they're saying it's minor, and I don't think it's any big deal, but it is a little worrisome to me.
Yeah, and if it's minor, it's minor. They're saying day to day, so we'll see how that turns up. I mean, maybe limited to start the season, but if it does turn worse, I, where do you think the Diamondbacks go? I have one crazy idea that I almost don't want to say out loud, but you have to imagine that those at bats go to Randall Grichuk and probably Alec Thomas.
Yeah, they brought um, Grichuk back to DH. He was platoon with Jock Peterson last year, who both of them did pretty well, but Peterson left. Um, but yeah, I would think Alec Thomas will be the one that steps in, or probably has the top chance. Great defender. Not as much offense for fantasy purposes. Another name would be, um, oh, it's slipping my mind. My own team. Oh my gosh. Jake McCarthy. There we go.
Mhm.
Um,
Is he not already slated to start in center though?
well, they were hoping Carroll would still play center this year instead of right.
Mhm,
So let me see what the current lineup looks like. They've been jostling through these outfielders, and it was kind of a good problem that they had in that
mhm.
they had all these good um, young outfielders. But let me pull that up here.
Well, while you do that, let me go ahead. I'll just throw my crazy idea out there. We'll get
Yeah, let's hear that.
all of our listeners gone immediately. See if they can make it through this. No, he's never played a inning of outfield. Okay, but if at some point over the next week or so, it turns out that Corbin Carroll's injury is worse than it seems than they originally thought, why not try Jordan Lawler out there?
Ooh,
Get weird with it. Never played a single inning of outfield, probably not gonna happen. I understand that this sounds insane probably, but I mean, he's gotta fit in somewhere. You probably don't want him to toil in AAA. I mean, he should get regular at bats if he's not gonna get anywhere else, but there's not a spot on the infield, so, if you have a chance, why not just try him in the outfield, see what you have, and then reevaluate when Corbin Carroll's gonna be back. Now, I think that's like a fail safe if it's gonna be a long time. If it's just gonna be a small delay, obviously, you just go with Grichuk and Thomas and McCarthy and, was it Lourdes Gurriel's the other outfielder there?
yeah, yeah, he's a
You just
left
ki you
fielder.
you just let that work if it's only gonna be a few weeks, but if it turns out to be significant time, I mean, I don't know. It's just a weird thought. You gotta find a place for him somewhere, or you gotta move him.
You're right. They yes, it looks like Fangraphs has McCarthy penciled in at center field, which he's had spurts before where he's good. He has some speed too, but he's been inconsistent. But I like your proposal because we've talked about it before. This is a big year for Lawler. He kind of has to put up this year some big numbers and stay healthy. So it's worth a shot, right? He's a good athlete.
Mhm. And I mean, your argument is you want him to play a healthy year, but also if he plays well, you want him to be healthy at the major league level. So
Yeah,
it at least gives him some versatility until, Suarez. It's time for Suarez to move on, or until it's time for Marte to move on, right? Because they just extended Perdomo, so a shortstop may not
yep.
be where he goes long term. But I don't know, just a random idea probably won't happen. But if it does, you heard it here first.
That's fun. Yeah. Yes. We're going to trademark that idea, Trevor, if it's successful.
Yeah, we'll see. Infielders going to the outfield, not always great. I always like there's been a lot of examples. I always think back to the Cardinals trying Matt Adams in the outfield. And it went poorly.
Backfired.
Yeah, it didn't go great, at least. Yeah. So
I
that's what I
remember
always think of.
I remember him. Another one this year is Jose Altuve.
Mhm.
Did you hear that? The Astros want to bump him into the outfield, which that's a pretty big name player to move after arguably, you know, the Astros caught a lot of flack for all the cheating stuff, but probably arguably a Hall of Fame track player, or at least Hall of Very Good player, um, making that switch.
When the Cardinals were moving Jordan Walker to the outfield, I learned this. When teams move infielders to the outfield, a lot of times in the minors, they will start as center fielders. Um, I assume Matt Adams did not, but like Jose Altuve might have been starting, at least learning the outfield from center field. And that's what they did with Jordan Walker too. Like he's not a center fielder long term; he's a corner outfielder. But when he first starts transitioning, they put him in center field. Do you know why?
Well, I was gonna predict your vision is its easiest
Yeah,
things are
it's
like in
easiest
the
to get the
middle of
read
your
off the
vision.
ball. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
easiest to get the read off the ball and learn your routes. I find that interesting, and every time I ask somebody thinking I might surprise them, everybody gets the answer right. So I guess it's not as interesting as I think, but it's I I think it's interesting.
It is interesting because a lot of times, well, you'd put so um I feel like sometimes they hide people in right field who aren't as good of outfielders or don't have as big of range
Mhm.
athletically. Um,
But you hope they have
but
a big arm.
yeah, that's the thing. And I suppose you
So,
got to learn to see the outfield before you try anything else.
well, yeah, and just get your routes, get your jumps down. I mean, it makes sense if that's what you're seeing. Another big one coming out of camp, another big injury. I think. Are you sad enough? Can we move on?
Yeah, we can move on. Yeah.
Another big injury. Reigning Rookie of the Year in the American League, Luis Hill is going to be, or Luis Heel rather, is going to be out for. We don't really know how much time, at least 4 to 6 weeks, but could be longer. That's a big one because a lot of people are going to draft him, higher up in their drafts.
Yeah, that is a tough one. High grade, which you never want to hear that unless it's your report card. High grade right lat strain. Aaron Boone said will prevent him from throwing at least at least 6 weeks. Um, he was someone I actually sold high last year. He was putting that nice run together like in the middle of the season,
Hmm.
but a good young player expected to be a huge part of that Yankees rotation. Um, and yeah, I don't know, would he be like their number 3 starter?
I probably. I mean, you
Maybe.
have Cole, Freed, Rodon, Schmidt.
Yeah,
Heel. I
I
mean,
s
it's supposed to be heel, right? So now
yeah,
instead,
yeah,
it's going to be probably Marcus Stroman. This is where you wish Chase Hampton was, healthy. He just got hurt recently too. Again, I mean, he missed all last year, but or maybe not all last year. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he missed time last year, and
yep,
he's again this year. So that would have been a spot he could compete for, but it looks like it probably just goes to Marcus Stroman. Maybe Will Warren will compete for it. I know they have a couple other guys as non-roster invites right now, but I imagine that spot basically just goes to Marcus Stroman, who I think they were hoping would be more of a long relief role this year.
yeah, I think you're right, just with his past experience as a starter. I saw he did not do well. It was yesterday, the day before, he had an outing that did not go so well, so
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to see what the Yankees do with that, but, yes, that's someone you would definitely have been drafting, even
Well, and
in your smaller leagues, I would think.
and they're saying it's like 4 to 6 weeks, if I'm seeing that. But with the shoulder thing, I think it's not dissimilar from what Clark Schmidt had last year, where he was out for a long time. So I think they're hopeful for 4 to 6 weeks, but it would not surprise me if it becomes a pretty big absence, pretty long absence.
Yeah, that's I think for fantasy purposes, um, there's not really an exciting plug-in name that I can think of. Like you said, probably Marcus Stroman, who at best is a streamer at this point.
Right. And I mean, in terms of prospects, they have Will Warren and former Twin Brent Hedrick on there. 40 man who could take it over. Will Warren did throw 22 innings in the big leagues last year, 11.5 K per nine, also a 10 ERA, but it's beside the point. He could come up. He could be more interesting fantasy wise because of the strikeouts. I think it just depends who they
Yeah,
want to fill that role, and I'm sure Will Warren will get a legitimate look. Um, so if it is him, I mean, if it looks like it's going to be him, and you have a draft that's closer to opening day, he's probably worth a late round flyer if he doesn't go earlier, just because he has some more strikeout upside. If it turns out that they come out and say we're probably just going to give the fifth spot to Marcus Stroman, I probably don't draft him.
yeah, agreed.
Also in the Yankees camp, Giancarlo Stanton is off to a slower start. I don't think he's out, but I think he's just working his way back. Oh no, he might miss April. I apologize. I didn't see that update. So he's been working
Yeah,
with an injury as well. He's big in the playoffs.
yeah, he was. I mean, pretty clutch. At this point, though, I would, other than probably a hardcore Yankee fan, that's someone you would probably be passing on in fantasy drafts because of the injury history, right? Unless I would say you wait till late and you need some power, cheap power. Otherwise, I think people are probably already scared to draft him.
Yeah, and of course, power is his thing. Still 27 home runs last year, and a 30% strikeout rate. Though his whiffs have been really high since going to New York. So that's a guy you're going after, like you said. If you just need some power, his walk rate was the lowest it's been in any year that he's had as a professional last year. So once one of the great power hitters that you could get in fantasy baseball. I don't know that he's somebody you're going after again, unless you need some power. And even then, with Heel and with Stanton, if you want to, if the well, Heel's probably sooner, but with Stanton, if you want to take a flyer in the late round, just hold him on your IL spots if you have them. It's not the worst thing you could do, because then you can just find somebody on the waiver wire. But Heel, you might have to do that earlier than like the last round. Stanton, you could probably get away with the last round.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I was just looking up. I thought, I wonder how many career home runs he has. And he has a good shot at 500 career home runs. He has 429 home runs. He's 35 years old.
Yeah, I mean, he's still hitting 25-ish or over
Yeah,
25. I mean, it's not 25-ish, it's over 25 a year. So, um,
even in his compressed seasons, yeah, the last four, 27, 24, 31, 35, never playing more than 139 games, usually around 110 games. So
mhm. Yeah,
that's what you're getting with him if you decide to draft.
you do. You're getting a guy who's going to hit you home runs. Are you off of his stat page?
I am.
All right. I don't know if you saw this by hand or if I'm the only person that would look, or offhand, if I'm the only person that would look at this. How many career steals does Giancarlo Stanton have?
You know what? I didn't look at that, and now I close it. Does he have any?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Maybe earlier in his career. Okay. Now I'm gonna go look. Do you have the number?
I have the number. Yes. He has his last steal was in 2020 when he had a single steal that year. His season
Yeah.
high is 13 in 2014.
Wasn't it? No, that's pretty good. Would be before they shifted the rules. Didn't he? Was it in a playoff game or an important game last season? They tried to send him home, and him running looked,
Became an internet meme.
yeah, looked like the most uncomfortable thing an athlete, could try to move their body to do.
All right. So what's your number? I need
Yeah.
a number. What do you think?
No, he had 13. Okay, you said his last one was 2020.
And he had a single steal that year. Yes.
Single steal. For
Season high or career high was 13 in 2014.
40.
That's a really good guess. It's 42. That's a really good
Oh, that
guess.
was a good guess. I was gonna say 50, and then I thought that seemed too high because he played probably 5 years, or I don't know how long he's been around.
If you're wondering why I always say I'm bad at fantasy, it's because I go to Giancarlo Stanton's page and I look at his career steals.
Digging into
So
what matters.
digging into what matters. Now, speaking of what matters, I want to push this again. You are focusing on fantasy baseball catchers in your new Substack. Do you want to talk about that before
Yes,
we go to break? Because we are going to talk about a catching, not dilemma, but a catching injury and what can happen when we come back from the break. So please share with us your new Substack, Nate.
yes. Thanks, Trevor. It's called Runs Produced, hoping to give you all the latest news in fantasy baseball catchers. Yes, don't forget about catchers. It is a spot on your roster. So I've been putting out a few articles, and over the weekend I did my top 10 list for 2025, 1 to 10, and maybe I'll talk about that later. I won't spoil it, but go check that out. You can find it linked from my Blue Sky account, and what I'm telling you is if you want to get all the advantages you can, even catchers matter, right? So that was kind of the niche and angle I'm looking at. And the strategies are interesting because most of them you are just getting power, but there's little subtle things that jump out. So yeah, check that out. It's been fun writing those up so far.
And can I say, as somebody who does more prospects or sticks on the prospect side of things more often, um, catchers are a nightmare. I mean, they're just a nightmare in terms of trying to figure
Yeah.
out who's going to be a good fantasy catcher. I mean, I have my list. I have somebody who just jumped up way up my lists of catcher rankings, but overall, it's like I, they're hard to rank because you try to rank them as just a regular offensive player, but the ceiling for a good offensive catcher is much lower than in other positions, and also
It is,
it
yeah.
seems like there's never a role for the good catchers because there's always a good catcher, good young catcher right above them, and they're just I don't know. They're just hard. I thought Luis Campusano was going to be a phenomenal offensive catcher by now. I was wrong about that, and I have other guesses coming up. So we'll see what happens. Right now, though, we are going to take a quick timeout, Nate. We will be back with more coffee talk. We are going to talk about catching on the other side of this break. Make sure to stick around. Of course, this is Coffee Talk, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. I am joined by Nate Kosher, the catcher guy.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna catch on. Nate, the
I'm
catcher guy,
I'm
Kosher.
trying to be. And that's what I was thinking, like, uh, it's kind of I know it's a very niche thing, but why not start digging into catchers and becoming the expert on catchers? So I'll see if I can do it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, Trevor.
I think you can. I think you have it in you.
At the
And yeah,
very least,
absolutely.
it's
Why not
fun.
catchers?
Yeah.
I my fantasy strategy for catchers is unless I feel like I really like a catcher at the top, I just wait till the end and take whatever's left. So it'd be good to have somebody to help me with that because I just don't think much about catchers when I'm drafting fantasy baseball.
There you go.
They're one of the positions, them and like relievers, I will just punt all the way down the line until I have to. So, speaking of the catcher, we were going to talk about Sean Murphy, broken rib, hit by a pitch, and he's going to be out for a significant amount of time. He's now 4 to 6 weeks. That is not great. If you are Atlanta, because he was plugged in to be your starting catcher. Now that does
Hmm.
open up an opportunity for one of the better catching prospects in the game, which is Drake Baldwin. He should have a chance at the starting job. As of right now, Roster Resource has him plugged in there. The backup catching option for the Braves is Chadwick Trump. So unless they sign a free agent, it seems like the path is cleared for Drake Baldwin. I am writing up Atlanta's system. I mean, not actively because we're talking on a podcast, but today I have been. Should be
Also,
out by the
on your
time
mind.
this drops. Yeah, and that first of all, if I could go on a tangent, that system is insane. In that it is all pitchers. They
Yeah,
have Drake Baldwin.
they do have a lot of pitchers.
They have Nacho Alvarez Jr. They have Diego Torres, who they just signed as an international free agent, and then they have pitchers. There are a couple other hitters sprinkled in that I'm told are supposed to be good, but I just can't reason putting them in a top 20. You'll see if I can get there. But it's just all pitchers right now. It is insane. And if I have to look at K per nine or walks per nine or ERA more, I'm going to go crazy just because I've had to do it so much writing the system up. Anyway, and that's a joke. I love doing this stuff, but it's just so many pitchers. Usually you
It,
get a break because you get to talk about hitters at some point. You just really don't.
yeah, well, that's funny you say that because I was looking to trade for Drew Hackenberg in
Yeah.
one of my deeper leagues. I saw he was on the trade block,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to go see, where he was at on the depth chart. I thought maybe he's battling for a rotation spot at the major league level. Nope, he's not. And then at the minor league level, they still have Bryce Elder, Smith Shaver, Waldrop, like all these
Yeah.
guys who you'd put
Mm-hmm.
much higher. I was like, well, I'm not going to trade him for him now. He's like number 8 or 9 or something.
I have him 11 just because what you said, and a couple other reasons, but just because what you said, it's just going to take so many
I don't
injuries
see
for
a
him to
spot
get
for
his
him.
chance.
Yeah,
Because you have Andy Anderson coming back this year, which you hope is good, and then Grant Holmes, Spencer Schwellenbach, Reynaldo Lopez, Chris Sale, and that doesn't include Spencer Strider.
yeah, exactly. Once
And
he's healthy,
then, right, and then you have all these 40-man guys like AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, Bryce Elder, Dylan Dodd, Davis Daniel, and then you have Drew Hackenberg or Lucas Braun, who are
right?
the top prospect pitching names. So it's just like where all the arms going to go. I mean, it's never a bad thing to get arms, but oh my gosh, this is an overwhelming. I've written up 12 or 13 of the 20. 3 of them are hitters, and I don't know where the rest of the hitters are gonna come in. It might just be pitchers from 12 or 13 down to 20 at this point.
That's wild.
Crazy. Anyway, Drake Baldwin might be the starting catcher
Yes.
when the season opens is where we started with this. So I don't know how much you know about Drake Baldwin, because, I know you're not a full-on prospect guy like myself,
Right. No, I
but
didn't know a ton. I went to read about him after I saw Murphy was hurt. So
mhm.
go ahead.
So I teased, that there was a catcher who just jumped hugely up my rankings. It was Drake Baldwin. I love his bat. He takes what you'd call professional at bats, meaning he can control the zone. He has good contact ability, doesn't give away at bats, and he's got some power. According to Baseball America, his 90th percentile EV last year was just like a tick under 106, and so he's got a little bit of pop. He could end up with average hit and power. He could end up with maybe above average power. There's kind of a range there, but he went from 92 in my personal top 600 that's not published anywhere, but he went from 92 and I bumped him up to around 50-ish, which is where I have Edgar Cuero, Kyle Teal, Jefferson Cuero, which is like not the
Yeah,
top guys. In my head, the top guys are Samuel Basallo and Ballesteros in Chicago, and no one's touching them. And then right after that, though,
they're
have
close. Yes.
I now have Drake Baldwin, I think, higher than either of the Cueros or Kyle Teal. So I am huge on his bat, and I think it could be very interesting if he gets the starting role and he does nothing but hit, and all of a sudden now you're gonna have a timeshare when Sean Murphy gets back.
So I just went to look him up again, and he's from Wisconsin, which is surprising. You don't hear a lot of major league talent coming out of Wisconsin, but he played hockey in high school and he led the state of Wisconsin with 43 goals scored.
Hmm.
So that's an interesting crossover. You hear baseball players, being football quarterbacks and pitchers, vice versa, but that tells me great athlete, great hand-eye coordination
Hmm.
uh, with the baseball hockey combo. And now he has an opportunity in front of him. So yeah, that's not a huge guy, but 5'10", he's listed at 5'10", 5'10", 210 pounds. But Sean Murphy wasn't exactly someone you'd pencil in and say, okay, I'm set for the
Mhm.
rest of the year.
And
He's okay, but yeah, it's exciting to see what Baldwin could do.
yeah, and Baldwin split time between Double A and Triple A last year. Overall, between both levels, he hit 276, had a 13% walk rate, 17% strikeout rate, and 16 home runs. Which, again, if you're talking about what you're getting out of a catcher, that's good, right?
Yeah.
So certainly an interesting guy. And you mentioned quarterbacks. You just mentioned Hackenberg. His brother was a quarterback at Penn State, and then I believe went pro.
Oh,
Christian Hackenberg,
yeah.
dude.
I never knew that.
I've so obviously doing research for this top 20 on Fantrax. The White Sox organizational catcher Adam Hackenberg is a brother. Christian Hackenberg is a brother,
Wow.
and then they have another brother who is a professional soccer player somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but yeah, that's a athletic set of brothers there.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, I remember Christian Hackenberg. I didn't put two and two together there. Huh.
Yeah. All right. So a couple other injuries. I don't know that Andrew Benintendi is going to be out for a while. He fractured his right hand. Not, I don't think that's one that really affects how you're going to be drafting. There are some options that'll get more playing time in Chicago, but most of the White Sox players you can get pretty late in drafts. I think you have Garrett Crochet, or not even Garrett Crochet anymore. I'm sorry. I think you have. I can't even think of who their highest drafted. It's Andrew Vaughn is up there in like the two
Oh,
area.
um, what's his name?
Luis
Luis.
Robert. Yeah, Luis
Yeah, yeah.
that's what I'm trying to think of. You get Louis I have Garrett Crochet in my mind. I think we're gonna talk about this, but I've gotten a lot of trade offers for him and, yeah, so you have Luis Robert, and he's gonna be a guy that gets drafted top 100, probably 60-ish, I'm guessing. I should have looked up the ADPs before we went on air, but I'm unprepared. So let's say 60-ish for Luis Robert, and then somewhere in the 200s, I'm guessing around 250 for Andrew Vaughn, right? So you can get any White Sox you want. That's my point.
Yeah.
And Spencer Steer's probably a bigger one who hurt his shoulder. Now, this one I have not seen.
Yes, I saw that today. So I don't think it's not I don't think it's similar to Corbin Carroll. I don't think like, sound the alarm, but he said he's going to get a cortisone shot or has gotten a shot. But he says he's not sure if he'll be ready for opening day. Steer said that himself. So
The Reds will be fine.
yeah, I think he'll be fine. I think they'll be fine, but it just sets him back, from the start of the year. That's he was pretty good. Was it 2 years ago he was better, and then last year he wasn't as good? I'm trying to remember.
Well, if you're worried
Let's look
about
it up.
his production for the Reds, current infield options for the Reds: Matt McLain, Ellie De La Cruz, Gavin Lux, Jeimer Candelario, uh, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Santiago Espinal. They have their Rule 5 pick, Cooper Bowman, who would have to make the team if he's going to make the team because he's a Rule 5 pick. Tyler Callahan is on the 40-man roster. Noelvi Marte, although Noelvi Marte has not had a good spring. And then they just have so many others that are on the way. I mean, Cam Collier's in Double-A, Edwin Arroyo's in Double-A. I mean, just so many infield prospects and not places to put them. So they will be fine. There are a lot of options right now. I think what their plan would be is to let Candelario play first base instead of Steer and then fill in with McLean, Lux. Obviously, Ellie's going to play shortstop. Maybe Bowman or Santiago Espinal, whoever makes the team.
Yeah, so Steer, I was kind of right. He's cleared 20 home runs each season. His rookie year, he had 23 home runs, 86 ribbies, and 15 steals, hit 271. Last year, his slash line was down, and he only hit 225, but put up more steals and more RBI and 20
Mhm.
home runs. But on base was down too. So, but yeah, that's for your fantasy purposes. He has probably multi-position eligibility and someone you'd be looking to draft for sure.
Yeah. More random quizzes for you. Do you know what organization Spencer Steer was originally a part of? I only remember this because I wrote him up for Prospects Live in my
I
first year writing scouting reports, and I was a fan of Steer.
I'll just default to Tigers because that's your favorite team, but I don't know the answer.
Minnesota Twins.
Oh, oh yes,
He came over
I
with
that was a
Encarnacion
terrible
Strand
trade.
and Steve Hajar, who's retired now, for
Um,
Tyler Mahle.
yes, okay. I did know that. I mean, I once knew that and I forgot. But yeah, that was a terrible trade for the, the Twins.
So let's get out of injuries here. Let's talk about something happier. We have some important relievers returning from injury. Trevor Megill, Felix Batista, both are back. Do either one of those particularly excite you, Nate?
I was a big Felix Bautista fan when he took the year he kind of took over. Um, I believe it 2 years ago. Kind of went into the season. Maybe it was even 3 years ago. Whenever he went into the season as the Orioles' favorite to close, he had an awesome year. Big strikeout numbers, fun to watch, and uh, I remember that year I was trying to get whoever I could from the Orioles bullpen because they also have I don't know how to say his first name, like Yenier Cano,
Mhm.
uh, good setup man, and like anyone in the bullpen that year was good. But Bautista's just a lot of fun to watch. Throws hard,
I did
tons of
see
strikeouts. So I like him a lot. So it's good to see him back.
I do too. And I did see manager Brandon Hyde said they're going to be very careful with him. So he probably won't be throwing back to backs. And I think he said they're going to limit the the one day offs too. So that might be more of a committee thing in Baltimore. But the way Batista looked coming back was very encouraging because I think he looked like his old self.
Yes. Yeah, it did seem that way. I think before he got hurt and he's having such success, you could probably at that time put him toward the top, like, oh, this guy's going to be, top 3, top 5 closer in all baseball. Now he's going to have to probably work his way back to where he's the unquestioned ninth inning guy, like you said. So he probably won't approach as many saves this year, but um, yeah, good to see him back.
Absolutely. And oh my, I didn't realize he was 6'8". He's huge. Uh, will be
He is a big guy.
30 in June. And when you talk about how good he was, I mean, 33 saves in 2023. And if I recall, like he was pretty consistent about it. I really don't know if he even had a blown save. I'm not top of my head. I'm just guessing because I don't see it on the stat sheet real quick. But yeah, he was
He was really good.
one of the better relievers that you could get. I mean, I heard more talk about him than Clase, if I remember correctly, and Clase has been consistently good. So
Yeah.
somebody who, as he gets back, will probably be more and more interesting. But if he is going to be in a committee situation, that could be not great for him. Trevor Megill, also projected to um, be a closer in Milwaukee
Hmm.
if he can get ready in time. I know there were some other names that people thought, maybe Abner Uribe. Now everybody wants Craig Yoho and his uh, Devin Williams-esque changeup to get a chance to close games out. But I mean, Megill should be the guy. Abner Uribe might get some looks late in games. Yoho, I don't think is even going to make the roster, so I don't know if that's worth talking about. But they do have a few guys who may get looks later in games. But overall, I believe it should go to Megill.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's enough time now with him making his debut and getting settled in. I think the Brewers want it to be him. I think they're going to give him the opportunity for
His
it.
to lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's good to see a couple of relievers coming back. What we'll do right now, Nate, we are going to take our last time out. When we come back, it's going to be Trade Central here. I made a couple so we can play Defend Yourself. And also, oh my gosh, Garrett Crochet's trade value is,
Yeah, we got to talk about
oh
that.
my gosh, I need to, it's interesting to say the least. And I'll leave it at that. So, what we're going to do right now, we're going to take a quick timeout. We will be right back. We're going to be talking trades because those are always fun. You are listening to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. Of course, Nate Kosher is with me. And oh man, fantasy baseball trades. They are interesting. Everybody values players differently. Before we jump into Defend Yourself with a couple of trades that I was able to make, and do you have trades, Nate?
I made one if we have
Okay.
time for it, but
So,
I'll let you run through yours.
okay, so we'll get to that in just a second. I have Garrett Crochet in one league, and I am always willing to trade almost any player that I have. That's just my philosophy. If you're going to pay me enough, you can have them.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I've been shocked, I should say, by where people are valuing Garrett Crochet. And I- if you were going to trade for him, Nate, how do you value him?
Well, I will answer your question, but first I have a question for you. Did you make a move to get Crochet? Like
I I
this
added him at the beginning of last season. Like
beginning of last season?
when he was announced as a starter, I added him.
Okay,
And now I have him. And now
shrewd move. Because I feel like a lot of people have probably either just traded for him or trying to get him once he went to the Red Sox. So I was just curious. But um, yes, I mean if you were trading for him in in a dynasty league, he's probably right up there toward the top of any pitcher out there. With going to a better team, the strikeout ability that we saw. Um, I mean, he's a ace future like lockdown ace potential. Um, in a redraft league, I mean, you'd have to be trading a no doubt offensive star or a package featuring like maybe a pitcher almost as good and trying to fill in a major spot that you didn't have, but you'd have to be offering someone that's like a plug-in, don't worry about it, like
Mhm.
Jose Ramirez or like someone like that almost, to do that one-to-one swap. But in redraft leagues, I mean, for pitchers in redraft, it's Skeens, is up there. Now probably Sasaki's up there, and Crochet's got to be top 5, right?
I'm valuing his SP3. I
Okay.
have Skeens, Scooble, Crochet.
Oh
I,
yes, I didn't even mention Scooble. Yeah,
I mean, you could put maybe Kirby, Gilbert. If you want to put Sasaki up there, I don't want to put Sasaki up there right
a little early.
now.
Yeah.
But I'm valuing him either way. Redraft Dynasty. I am valuing him as SP3, and it's wild that it's not wild. So I understand this. People are reluctant to give that value. And I'm holding firm on the value, but people are reluctant to give that value because he's had his injury history, which is well noted. But also, and maybe this is just a pet peeve of mine as I grow into a crotchety old man. If you're going to try to create trade for a player, and I tell you the value that I hold him at, don't try to devalue him to me by telling me he's hurt all the time. Like, then why do you want him? And
Yeah.
I am all for. I do it all the time. I try to get the injury discounts on guys, but as soon as I get told that they're going to hold them to the value that hold them to the value of pre-injury or like they didn't have an injury history, I go, that's fair. Enjoy your day. Like I get it. I understand holding to that value, and I also understand maybe putting a little bit of a discount on pitchers with an injury history. But to be like, oh, he's just. I mean, there's a giant question mark. He may not be healthy, so you should trade him to me for bits and pieces. Like, well, you don't want him then. I mean, he's clearly terrible. What's the point? If I say he's
Yeah.
SP3 and you're like, but he's not though.
It's either some reverse psychology they're trying to trick you, or it's almost like they didn't see his true breakout, and you're just trading for someone with potential, but he could have some injury questions. I mean, this guy he showed us last season what he can do, and now he goes to a better team and better situation.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I'm pretty sure he was an all-star last year. I think he got
Yeah,
some
he
like
was.
Cy Young votes, and we're just like, yeah, spare part. And some of the trades aren't terrible, but uh, for example, one of the offers I got was led by Kevin McGonigal. I love Kevin McGonigal. I think he's a great prospect. He's probably top 25 for me. But if I'm going to trade SP3 and I'm going to trade Garrett Crochet, I'm going to insist I get a top 10 prospect if I'm doing a prospect package to lead it. And this
Yes.
team that I have is finished last place. Like, I'm rebuilding it completely. So I wouldn't mind doing it for prospects, but my headline prospect needs to be in the top 10. And I don't think
You need
I
a
like,
name, a marquee
yeah,
name. Yeah.
right. So I don't know. Interesting to see, interesting conversation to have. How much do you devalue him because of injury history? I just personally, I'm going to hold him at SP3 value. And if I get offers less than that, they're just no, thank you.
Well, you remember he also did the thing at the end of the year where he said he wasn't going to pitch in the postseason,
Mm-hmm.
or if he got traded, he wasn't going to pitch in the postseason until he got a contract, or whatever that was. That probably soured some people just thinking,
Mm-hmm.
they could get him from you because he's unhappy, or I don't know.
Right. And by the way, when I'm going on my tangent about don't devalue him because he got hurt straight to my face and then tell me you want to trade for him, because all you're trying to do is get a discount, which I
Yeah.
guess I respect the hustle. That wasn't just like one person. This is like everybody who I'm saying no to because I'm holding him at SP3 value. They're like, but he's hurt all the time, so why would you want to hold on to him? I'm like, well, let me tell you.
That's funny.
So,
Maybe you landed in a league with some scorned White Sox fans
or some Red Sox fans, they just want to
or
get their guy for
Red Sox
cheap.
fans. There's that too.
All right, defend yourself time. So this was So this isn't a league I haven't talked about a whole lot. Um, I it's a free league, so I make moves a lot more freely. I'm happy to just make trades. It's easier to make trades in these leagues.
Yeah, no doubt.
My roster includes guys like Bobby Witt Jr., Dylan Cruz, Junior Caminero, Jason Dominguez. I have Shohei Otani, but just the hitter version because this is Yahoo, so he gets split in half. And then the
Okay. Yep.
pitching side, I have like Tarek Skubal, George Kirby, Hunter Green. Um, and my prospects are very good. Also, I'm very proud of this team. Like I have Max Clark, I have Walker Jenkins, I have Bubba Chandler, and a few others. I'm very proud. So in this league, I did in order to get Shohei Otani hitter, I had to include Adley Rutschman as part of the return package.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Tyler Stevenson there. I had no real options as to who was going to be a catcher. And I'm not necessarily upset about Tyler Stevens there. So I'll just see if I can't get a high end catcher out of a prospect. So I had Teoscar Hernandez on the trade block and talked to a few people about it. Eventually worked out a trade where I send Teoscar Hernandez and I get Tehran Lorenzo. This was before his bomb to center field. I get Tehran Lorenzo and I also get Isaac Paredes because I have Andrew Vaughn starting at first base. So I was planning on Colt Keith eventually being the first baseman, but Paredes has first and third, and now he's got the Crawford boxes. So I feel pretty good about that. Just waiting it out to see how that happens. And then also I have
Mm-hmm.
a potential future catcher in Tehran Lorenzo.
Okay, so 2 for 1.
Yes.
I think I like that. I don't know if there's much to defend. I don't know if there's much to defend. I mean,
I was just
yeah.
clearing a
Well,
spot. So I was clearing an outfield spot is what I was doing. Because I mentioned I have Dominguez, I have Dylan Cruz. I also have Steven Kwan. I have Matt Wallner, who I love as a breakout prospect. And I had JJ Bleday, but I just dropped JJ Bleday to make room for the other trade that I'm going to talk about. I also have Parker Meadows. So I feel like my outfielders were good in terms of what I could get. And so I just, made a trade.
yeah, I like that. So I mean, I know we always talk about prospects.
Mhm.
There is something to be said about trading the major league level person who's had success for
Mhm.
potential, and people that haven't necessarily proven themselves, and you're projecting down the road what they're going to do. But Hernandez, I don't love him as a fantasy player, or as a someone on my fantasy team. I feel like last year he did great. He was on that 1 year prove it contract where he went to the Dodgers,
Mhm.
and now he signed a longer contract now. So I'd be surprised if he matches last year's numbers. He had a career high 33 home runs, 99 ribbies, hit 272. It was probably his best season at the age of 31. So
Mhm.
I would be surprised if he hits that again. So there's that. So you move him away, you get
Mhm.
a Tiger, and which, I mean, that's always something, right? When
That's
you get
one way
one
to
of,
put it. Yeah.
I mean, when you're getting one of your guys.
Yeah, and he's been great since he got traded from the Dodgers to the Tigers.
But he had, yes.
Huge power potential. Like I'm just trying something. I need a catcher. I'm happy to just piece together catchers, or I could trade for my prospects to get a catcher, but I don't really want to do that. So I just thought I'd give it a shot. And to be honest, I didn't have too many better offers for Teoscar Hernandez. And I felt like I could maybe lose value at the major league level. I still got Paredes, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, I mean, Paredes,
Because he's better than Andrew Vaughn at first base.
right, he's a starter. He could break out. He could probably hit as many home runs as Hernandez, potentially. So I like that.
Yeah, and there's another benchmark that there's a lot of rankings you can use. One of the rankings I like to use, I mentioned this before. I like Baseball America, and their coverage of prospects and all that. In their top 500, they have Teoscar Hernandez at 87. Just before him, they have Walker Jenkins, who I have as a prospect, at 86. And then at 82 and at 84, they have Jason Dominguez and Dylan Cruz, who are both already on my major league roster. So at some point, I feel like Teoscar Hernandez is going to drop from where he's sitting at, inside the top 100. And I have guys who are going to be rising up inside the top 100. So I just kind of diversify where I have some talent. So I agree with you. I mean, it's not, I don't even think that's that big of a trade, to be honest, but it is a
No, it's
trade that I made.
yeah, it's not earth shattering, but I think you're selling high on him probably at the
Hmm.
right time.
Yeah. And in my quest to rid myself of any Dodger that isn't named Shohei Ohtani, I also, same league, I traded Zaire Hope. I had Zaire Hope as a prospect. I know he's been garnering a lot of attention lately.
Yes,
Dodger
yeah.
prospects currently terrify me to just my core because the Dodgers are a great organization overall, which means they're going to be spending money to put good players in front of their prospects, and they're going to be developing these prospects into great players that may or may not get traded and may or may not see an opportunity. So this is completely complementary towards what the Dodgers organization is doing. For fantasy, don't love it. Scares me. So I put Zaire Hope on the block. And I wound up getting Moises Ballesteros, who I mentioned that I love and have as
Hmm.
the second overall catcher in fantasy baseball. And I got Ben Joyce. So another 2 for 1. And if you want to, I mean, I like Ben Joyce, especially, it's a saves holds league. I know they just brought in a closer, so that's important to note. He's
Yep.
potentially closer of the future. Obviously, throws really hard. A good reliever to have. And if you want to go with my top 600, Zaire Hope was at 40, no, 32, and Ballesteros I had at 38. So I'm using Ben Joyce to cover what is a 6 position gap on my own 600 for how I value prospects for fantasy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Hope there. Yeah, he is getting a lot of hype. The potential's there. Multi-tool star, but I don't. Yeah, once again, yeah, I think that's a pretty nice trade because we've talked about the problems with the Dodgers and just that they're so stacked at the major league level that how are you going to you have to be really good to break into that
Hmm.
lineup, and it's going to be that way for the next few years. With Joyce, I do think he could be looking down the road a couple of years like one of the top closers in all of baseball. Um, I think this was him. He said he wanted to hit 107 miles per hour this year.
Yes, yes, he did say
he's
that.
he's trying for it,
Yeah, I
which
think he
that
had
scares
106 last year.
yeah, that scares you a little bit, but he's got good stuff.
Hmm.
The Angels traditionally, I think they've been someone that has tried to have a traditional like one closer type thing where it's not split up via committee.
Hmm.
Who did they bring in? I was thinking it's Carlos Estevez, but that was the Royals.
Was it Kenley Jansen?
Oh yes, yeah, it was Jansen. Another guy been around forever. So Jansen, I mean, because of his name and history, he probably gets the first shot, but
Hmm.
he could definitely. Joyce is going to get some looks. I'm sure
And again,
Jansen
saves
will have
holds
some blow
leagues.
ups.
You know,
Yeah,
what's the
right.
difference?
Yeah. So Joyce is someone I think maybe undervalued right now, or even a bit of a sleeper long
And
term.
if I could talk about Ballesteros for a second. So now, by the way, just with these two trades, same league, I brought in 2 potential catching options in Lorenzo and in Ballesteros. Unfortunately, there's a chance neither one sticks at catcher. Um, Lorenzo may
Yes.
long term move off catcher, go to first base, and Ballesteros is not great defensively. But as a 20-year-old, this dude was comfortable in double A and high A. So he's knocking on the door, should debut at some point during the 2025 season. And again, I don't know if it'll be catcher. They have Miguel Amaya and Carson Kelly right now as for their catcher position.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard for him to break into a DH or first base spot if he's not going to be catching. So I do understand that there are some roadblocks there immediately. But if they deem him good enough to catch, I don't see why his bat does not overtake Miguel Amaya and Carson Kelly at some point.
Yeah, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that big of a gap to jump if he
Mhm.
can make it into the majors. Um, I agree. And the way you valued them both in the 30s, it's not that there. You could almost argue if you wanted Ballesteros badly enough, you could have just done a straight up 1-to-1,
Mhm.
but you also came away with Joyce. So, yeah, I think both of these are easier to defend than mine last week.
Or some of
Uh,
the others I've brought
oh,
out, 'cause I've
yeah,
brought
or
out
some
some
of the other
stinkers
ones.
for sure.
Before we made defend yourself an official segment, yeah, those are good though.
Just for another list, the Baseball America has Zaire Hope at 40 and Moises Ballesteros at 46. So most lists should not have them separated by too much, and I get to add Ben Joyce. So I felt good about that one, and I felt good about the Teoscar Hernandez trade too.
Yeah, I think I'm with you both on both those.
All right, Nate, time for your trade. Let's defend yourself.
Okay, this
Put you
one
on the hot seat.
I know. Here I am. This one's messier because contracts come into it. So it's the league where we have players on contracts. So I had signed O'Neal Cruz for a 1 year. He was a restricted free agent, so he came to me. So this is the only year I'm going to get him. Right?
Okay.
I've always liked O'Neal Cruz.
So you would have had him for the 2025 season.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I would have had him for 2025. I had him for a little bit on my team. His salary is at $41. I was offered a third rounder this year, a third rounder next year, and Bo Bichette, who this is we know he struggled, right, and he may bounce back, whatever, but he had a contract of $80. So double O'Neal Cruz. Bichette I would have for 2025, and then I could make him a restricted free agent next year, potentially, but his salary would probably go up even more. So a potential of 2 years at Bichette with a bad contract, 2 third rounders for 1 year of O'Neal Cruz. So that came to me, and I thought, I was like, this is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, Bichette, if he does good enough, could put up O'Neal Cruz numbers, maybe not as many steals, and I get 2 draft picks, which I was a little short on draft picks this year, so then I get a top 3 round draft pick. But now, so I went through and I did the trade. I sent O'Neal Cruz away. I have Bo Bichette. And now I don't even know if I can defend myself because I'm regretting this trade because now my team is way over the salary cap. And like other players that are at the $80, $90 range, I should get someone like as good as Aaron Judge in this league, or um, Kyle Tucker, or someone like that. So Bichette's high contract doesn't match his production, and I know hoping for bounce back, but now I've been trying to ship him away because it's just he's taking up way too much. We have $350 cap, and he's 80 of that now. Um, so that was my trade, but I did get 2 third rounders. So what do you
So
think of that?
so you trade O'Neal Cruz at $40 to almost double your salary to get Bo Bichette and add 2 third rounders? Just to make sure I understand
Basically,
this correctly.
yes. Basically, that's it. Yes.
As your podcast co-host and friend, I got to tell you that was not a great trade in my mind, and I mean
I
this as
know.
respectfully as possible.
I know. I don't know why I accept it. I
So
I agree with you.
you're looking at probably a, let's say, top 40 fantasy asset in O'Neal Cruz,
Mm-hmm.
and if you slide down, let's say maybe top 50 or 60 if you're being generous on Bo Bichette, more likely in the top 75 area.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you doubled your salary, you're now over the salary cap. What's the penalty for being over the salary cap?
Well, I don't actually know. I haven't figured that out yet. I know if I would cut Bichette, it hurts me even more. Like I get a penalty. So now I'm trying to. No one wants him, and so I've kind of dug myself into this hole where now I have to shift. If I'm stuck with him, shift other good pieces away. So I just dug myself a hole with this one. The draft the
So
the draft picks I that were dangled threw me off, and I accepted it.
so there's an interesting conversation to have. And I know we don't have a ton of time here, but there's an interesting conversation to have is what do draft picks mean in these trades? Because for me, and I do this all the time, I will trade away every draft pick I have and I will use it as trade capital to get players, and then I'll worry about the rest later. Um,
Yeah, we should.
I mean,
That is an
how deep
interesting
is this league?
discussion.
If we're talking third rounders, how deep, like how many teams are in this league?
This is a 30-team league.
Okay, so yeah, dude, this was awful. If you're talking third rounders,
Yeah,
you're getting anywhere between 61 and
and
90.
90. Yeah, yeah. So it's first round. By then, the first round player draft people are all gone. All the first rounders have been
Mhm.
selected. All the other people in quality people in the free agent pool who you could draft are probably starting to leave. So you'd be looking at like low end offensive starters or pitchers with question marks, probably.
Where is your team at in terms of competing?
I would say I'm middle of the road. So last year I sort of sold off pieces to get draft picks, moved things around. I have most of my positions figured out. Basically, you just want to get a start at every position. It's such a deep league. So I'm hoping to contend, but I wouldn't be surprised if I'm about in the middle.
Did you finish in the middle last year? Were you like trying to take the turn and become a competitive team this year?
I want him to be better, but I didn't quite I don't think I did enough. So now I'm
Oh,
just stuck in this
Bichette
weird
was the
land.
piece. Bichette was the piece to turn the corner, or not Bichette. O'Neal Cruz was the piece to
O'Neal
turn the
Cruz,
corner.
I know. I know. I had O'Neal Cruz. I also had Dansby Swanson at shortstop. Um and now also have some power with Eugenio Suarez and
Oh
a pretty
man.
good pitching lineup, but now I blew it up. I can't even defend myself, Trevor.
That's all right. To make you feel better, I traded Jesus Mate for way less than his value right before he exploded in terms of hype. So I also make these trades, but
We should
I think
save that draft pick thing though. That's interesting.
so. I think where you go from here, if I were you, based on what you've told me and the information I have, without knowing what this roster looks like, I am either trying to sell Bo Bichette for basically nothing to get his money off my roster and just living
Yep.
with the consequences of what I've done,
Right.
or attach draft. I mean, you almost have to attach your draft picks to other players to try to regain, or because you said you have Bichette for a few years. This is not like you're going to lose his contract after this year. He's going to be $80 for the next 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would trade him for next to nothing. I would find whoever has room for him. Be like, listen, you get Bichette, and I get.
It would have to be a rebuilding team uh
Yeah,
because they have more space,
right.
obviously. And yeah.
And you just be like, I get a third, take another third, and then you can start using these thirds. You'd be like, I got 3/3 that I can move now and try to move into the second, or I can move 3/3 for a mid-tier player to move up. I don't know.
I got
I don't think your options are zero, but I don't think they're great.
Yeah, I did get offered an eighth and a ninth, and I thought in this year, which the current year draft, they're a little more valuable because everyone wants to hop in and everyone thinks they have a chance this year. But I thought I gotta at least. I was thinking the same thing. Try to get a third rounder, like maybe a third straight up, or like an eighth, a ninth, and a fifth, or something like that. So
Are there prospects in this league?
yes,
So
there
could you
are.
find like a mid to low tier prospect that you project out, like like
Yeah,
next to me, and
someone to
I can
target.
try to find you a mid to bottom tier prospect that I project to break out or something.
Potentially, yes.
'Cause
And
that might be the move. Be like, listen, give me a couple of lottery tickets, and you can have Bo Bichette because yikes.
yeah. Yeah, so
Or
that
offer the same trade back. Say, I'll give you Bichette and 2/3, and you give me O'Neal Cruz.
I'll take O'Neal Cruz back. Yeah, it, uh, I don't know why I did it, but he's on my team.
Oh man, I could see why you wanted to just do it if we had time. I'm glad we had time. Uh, so if you missed it, Coffee Talk will be back every single week from now on. It is baseball season, so you will hear from us weekly at this point. So for the first time in a long time, Nate, we can say we will see you next week. Make sure to check out Nate's Substack. You can find it in his Blue Sky profile. And of course, make sure to share Coffee Talk with your friends. Rate Coffee Talk if you like us.
Yeah.
Because we would love to continue to grow as a podcast within this Pitcherless Podcast Network. But for episode 38, my name is Trevor Hooth. Of course, thank you to Nate for joining me as always. You've been listening to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network.